Awesome. So welcome everyone. Really appreciate everyone's time and attendance today, especially the panelists for joining us for this conversation. Quick little introduction for Startup Grind and Startup Grind Grand Rapids. Startup Grind is the world's largest network of technology and tech entrepreneurs and startups. We operate in over 600 chapters in over 125 countries, and we have a mission to connect, inspire, and educate. We also have values of make friends, not contacts. That's how we differentiate ourselves from other networking groups and meetings. Help others before you help yourself, and give before you take. Those are our values. So it's with that we really try to do what we can to help bolster and boost the ecosystems in the cities within which we operate. And that's why it's really fun to have a talk really on the topic of today, because this is really ecosystem focused. The topic title is Talent, Tech, and Equity, Creating the Best Next Normal. Amid the backdrop of the state of what's around us, things are pretty dire. We can look left, we can look right. We know we have stories, personal friends, acquaintances, coworkers that are directly affected by the pandemic. Under that reality, we can see what's around us, what's coming that we can see, what's coming next that we can't. There are people that while they're picking up the pieces, they're also looking for, and they're focused on the silver lining. And 4 of those people are on this panel tonight. Fact is, the pandemic is leveling established norms globally and across all industries. We can't know what things will look like in 6 months, a year, or even 60 years from now. And there's a quote by Dr. Berwick in a paper that was just published last week. He said, "At this early stage, it is more honest to frame the new post-COVID-19 normal not as predictions, but as a series of choices." And I liked how he said that. And I want to talk about the choices we can make for our businesses, our teams, our families, and ourselves that will create that next reality. So with that, I want to introduce the panel. And panelists, if you could introduce yourself and then what it is that you're doing and with the firms that you're with. We'll start with Ariana.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for taking your time out today to chat with us. We're super excited to talk to you guys. So I am Ariana Waller. I'm the founder of Wallway Technologies, a tech firm that develops technology solutions for non-technical founders, as well as my podcast, Women in Tech with Ariana.
Nice.
Cool. And then, AJ?
Alvin Hills IV, co-founder of the Midwest Tech Project, which is a diversity in tech organization designed to connect people of color to career pathways in technology, ranging from internships, entry-level employment, startup boot camps, really just making sure that people of color understand where the industry is now and where it's going, but most importantly, provide access. So helping people get connected and removing barriers so we can help increase the diversity in both the tech talent space, but as well as the tech entrepreneur space. Then by day, I work for the city of Grand Rapids as a business developer in the Office of Equity and Engagement. So helping to make sure that we spend as much as we can locally with diverse vendor pool, minority companies, women-owned companies, and then our special micro-local business program for the city of Grand Rapids.
Busy. Sounds like a busy guy, just like Ariana there. And then Angel, if you could introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Again, thanks for joining. My name is Angel Cruz. I'm one of the co-founders of Loop Coding Center and Aztec. So Aztec was launched November, and all of this has been basic because of people needing digital solutions. And Loop Coding Center, we launched about 3 years now. Loop Coding Center, what we do is expose diverse students to technology by partnering with schools and nonprofits to teach coding education. We focus on the exposure. Our students will not be ready to take on a career quite yet, or develop the next Facebook or Instagram. But we do expose them to something that perhaps they were never exposed to. And with all of this right now, we have moved on to the doing online classes right now just because of not being able to meet, even though that's our core values for us. Is something about building those relationships with the students. And so right now, just doing things virtually.
Very good. And then Ian.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. This is Ian in Washington. My role at Grand Circus, I've been there going on about 6 years. Grand Circus is a little over 7 years old. But what we do is we teach people how to become developers. So Ariana was one of our students as well. One of the things that we look forward to doing is introducing people to code who normally wouldn't have an introduction to this. So, one of the things we do is a free intro to coding class for people who are just looking to maybe jump into this and learn a little bit more about programming. To full-time boot camps and after-hour boot camps. So we have programs in both Grand Rapids and Detroit. Similar situation where, our classes are traditionally taught in person, and we had to completely pivot to a remote model. So in fact, as everything was breaking out, and lockdowns were happening across the country, we had to transition our class that was graduating to a remote demo day. So we had roughly about 2 weeks to make the complete transition to a remote program. We created a actual digital brochure for employers to check out. And now we have about 80, 90 students across our campuses that are in remote classes right now. So it's been a little bit of a challenge, but excited to talk to you guys a little bit more about what that looks like and to answer any questions you guys might have.
Great. Well, again, thank you to everyone on the panel for joining us today with this conversation. And I want to kind of have this, since we have a smaller group, I want to have it kind of like a pretty generally open forum. If there is Q&A, feel free to pop that in the chat, and then I'll introduce those questions to the panel as the conversation is moving along. If it's urgent, I guess I don't mind if you unmute yourself and just join in, because a lot of the folks that are attending are also in the ecosystem as well. So interested to hear what everyone has as part of this discussion. I'd like to start by talking about some of the challenges and concerns that our panelists are having, either themselves in the organizations or the constituents that they serve, and then move on to the opportunities, and then talk about some of those sort of micro choices that we all can make, whether it's the constituents, the challenges that we want to give the people that we serve to take some action to bring about the what life is going to look like for each one of us in our next normal. So maybe I don't know which one of you might want to start with addressing some of the concerns or challenges that your organizations or constituents or stakeholders are experiencing right now, after the initial shock of the pandemic.
Sure. Especially from the city standpoint, we know that constituent stakeholders is a ton of uncertainty right now, right? And uncertainty mixed with unemployment. So those two things are making it super difficult for us to, navigate COVID. But for the next phase, with the social distancing, engaging the public and being a Black man and engaging, Black community, virtual is cool, but, some of what works best is being with each other and some of the opportunities that happen organically just by being in a room. So when we think about how do we move forward, it's super tough to do so with all the emails that are filling up in your inbox and trying to make you realize, prioritize ours is just super challenging. So as we think about economic recovery and resiliency from the city standpoint, we have to think about some of those entrepreneurs that didn't get access to any funding at this point, whether it was the payroll protection, whether it was the economic injury, disaster, some of the stuff that came out of the right place. We are looking at where are the gaps in funding, who hasn't gotten anything, and kind of starting there. And then we have to think about our neighborhoods, right? We have a ton of brick and mortar establishments and restaurants, and we're Beer City, USA. And how do you still continue to support those businesses when only takeout is offered right now? And we know some restaurants will have to redesign their landscape to provide more distance in between. each customer. So when it comes to challenges and concerns, I think first and foremost, we have to make sure that from a policy standpoint and a resource standpoint, we're doing everything we can to help keep people in their homes and at least while they're unemployed without choice, right? COVID kind of just came in and wiped, took some people's the rug right up from under some people. And then, how do we get back? And we see a ton of different initiatives, but we don't know how long this thing is going to drag on. And as a month and 2 months come without more stimulus, we'll have more constituents who are in survival mode and need as much support as they can to survive, let alone to thrive. So I don't want to go on the bandwagon too much for that, but those are some of the things that we're facing. And from a Midwest Tech standpoint, it's just really the engagement piece. We have mentoring programs for young people, and trying to get young people to code or do some of those things virtually is a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you bring up some good points. Like technology is its own barrier, right? Just even access to simple technology. Coding boot camps can't be done on a phone, right? And then
Yeah.
Also, especially organizations like Startup Grind, we're like, yeah, tech, but it's not a cure-all. So many of the biggest challenges and barriers are the real ones of rent and so on.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So that's some good insight there. Who's next?
I'll go. Yeah. So I guess just kind of talking about some of the very similar situation where we're finding that the diversity initiatives that we have are a little bit of a challenge because of just equity. Access to internet access. We have a student right now who unfortunately has lower grade internet access just because of like where she lives in the city of Detroit. And so, there's certain pockets of the city, that actually have higher, quality like internet. So that's presented a challenge. In terms of just accessibility, one of the biggest things we struggle with is, there's a number of people who are like, I just lost my job. There's no way that I can take a class or advance myself or, do a boot camp. I don't know how I'm going to pay, rent or my mortgage next week. And so, one of the things we've done to try to combat that and try to help out is we've actually created a community relief scholarship, internally to try to offset some of the costs of the boot camp to, people who've been negatively impacted by this, which, essentially all of us have in some way. But, people who have already thought about maybe, pivoting towards a career in tech, now they have this opportunity to do this, with this, this half off of tuition essentially. So this is something that we did internally. So, we're not getting any outside funding to do this, but this is a really important, step towards helping people in this position because, for the foreseeable future, as Alvin said, we don't know when this is going to end. And, to that, effect, this could go on for another 3 or 4 months. And that's just not, a feasible position for a lot of people to, not work or not do anything during that time. So, as so many other like organizations, we're really encouraging people to just like, invest in themselves, learn, programming or at least just check it out just to see if it's something that they may be interested in doing, because a lot of jobs, even from our employer side, are even saying that like what we're doing with the remote programs is great because for the foreseeable future, what they're going to be doing is just hiring remote workers solely. Like, the idea of like coming back in person is probably pretty, limited for most of these like roles. So, what we're really trying to do is encourage people to recognize that, this is an opportunity. You can either, proactively take advantage of it now or reactively be forced into it later. And so, right now, that's one of the biggest challenges right now, and especially persons of color. It's really tough for them to even, it was hard before, this broke out. Now it's even more challenging with just, general access to technology. So that's the next step is like, really, how do we find ways to help those individuals, not only financially to be able to take a boot camp, but also like, if there's technology needs that they may have, how can we better help them? And so pretty connected to a pretty wide network across like Grand Rapids and Detroit. So we've really been trying to tap into some of our partners there and just seeing what we can do to increase that, because again, this is not going away, and it's something that we're battling with right now with what our next coming by, whether or not we're going remote or not.
Right. When we look at how long this transition is going to be, the CEOs of all the big companies this last quarter, they are not providing any forward projections or expectations. They're saying, don't expect anything from us, and if the top CEOs from the top hundreds of companies are like saying, we don't know and we're not going to promise anything, that says a lot to us on the ground when we're trying to think of, is this 3 months, is this 6 months, how do I plan for what I'm going to do? That's a good point. And then an interesting thing is, especially pre-COVID, 40% of the companies worldwide had some element of work from home. Now 80 some percent are compelled to work from home. That's a huge adoption. So down the road, that can only benefit everyone who's interested in a career in tech. But now there's this crazy gap that you're talking about, that you've identified, and that's very real and very immediate. Ariana or Angel?
Yeah. So my challenges are a bit different. As someone who has a tech firm, and right now we're offering services to businesses and founders who need tech solutions. So I think now it's a bit, I would say, easier for me to pitch right to people, because people obviously see like this is their only option, right, to actually integrate and get more new customers, is to have a tech platform. And so for us right now, even before COVID-19, so a lot of people who work on my team are in different states and actually even in different countries. So the work from home thing, I've kind of already had the flexibility, and I'm blessed for that. But of course, obviously there are other industries and folks who, just don't have that opportunity. But I spend a lot of my time, even before then. So I do a lot of, not counseling, but do a lot of one-on-ones with founders, asking them, helping them develop roadmaps for their ideas. And now I'm having to meet with business owners who have never thought about how to use technology and to figure out how to innovate it, right? So for me, it's an exciting time, right, to figure out, well, how do we create reliable solutions for religious organizations, for people who are seamstress, right? For people who are in the food industry, right? These are the different people who are coming to me. So it's exciting to see the level of innovation, but also, sad to see how, in a way, how fast things are changing, and kind of see people play catch up, right? About, some of the things that they should, be doing and should have opportunity to do. So, I would say for me, it's an exciting time. I'm excited to see what the next 6 months looks like for, all these different industries. I was just reading an article, random thought, about a guy who 3 years ago, he launched a tech startup. It's insane. And he and his friends had this idea to develop software solutions for delivery only restaurants, right? So it's like it's a competitor to Uber and Uber Eats and Grubhub, but their model is a bit different. But now they're like freaking killing it, right? So it's like, how do we, my focus now, right, is, well, how do we figure out how to help these small businesses develop simple solutions, right? Maybe not the next Facebook and the next Instagram, to help them get, above the curve and, create more revenue. So the conversations have been interesting for the last couple of weeks for me. And yeah, I can say I'm definitely excited about the future. And I know there are going to be other questions that we can dive deeper later. So
yeah, so tech can't fix everything, right? But there are so many brick and mortars that have to find some way to remain relevant. And now tech is the only way to do so, whether that's simply through Instagram and messaging, or building a tech version of whatever your solution was before. And so many of, say, service providers, so like what you and Angel are doing, where serving these companies, so many of your pitches before might have been met with, yeah, that's next year's plan, or we're going to get around to rebuilding that or whatever. Now people have to show up. Like they can't choose not to. So it is a great opportunity in this. So a lot of people call this a big pause. And so this is a huge pause where some people can take that time to invest.
Right.
I don't know if I
Yes.
stopped broadcasting there, but Angel?
Yeah, so to add to what Ariana was talking about with, especially talking to Spanish businesses, restaurants, and just grocery stores. Thankfully the grocery stores are doing well, but a lot of Spanish-owned restaurants, they were struggling because they didn't have a website. And so, again, having conversations to have the platform where people could, just go and order. And so I've been talking to a lot of restaurants right now who cannot afford going with a Grubhub or any of those services because they just charge so much compared to, it's not worth for them to invest in something like that. So, they're looking for solutions, affordable solutions. And so, again, it's just, unfortunately, not good for them, but it has been an opportunity for us to just adapt and help this business out. And then with loop coding, our struggle says that we can meet the students in person. Also, we work with underrepresented students. So a lot of the students who perhaps don't have, whose parents don't have disposable income to invest in computers or even internet. And so they might not have one at home. And so for us we pivot by being able to offer computers that you can lend. So we let students borrow a computer. And so that's one problem that we solve. Now, some don't have Wi-Fi, so that's something we couldn't. We did send them though, however, to Comcast. They have the, I believe it's $10 a month for Wi-Fi if you're a student in GRPS. And so that's something that we were trying to expose them to, that we could help them, have the tools to be able to learn. And it's been great. I was reading an article on how a school, I think it was New York, USA Today, how their students were learning code since kindergarten, and they were able to adapt quickly to a pandemic and being able to do classes online because they were exposed to all these resources already. And so again, I think that power of coding and exposure is just so important. And so, right now that's what we're trying to keep on pushing.
Yeah, that's awesome. It is kind of, to Ariana's point, it is kind of exciting to have these opportunities to bring some, bring the opportunity for success to, whether it's businesses or students or whatnot. So now moving on to like the opportunities we see, maybe working backwards from like Angel and then Ariana and and Ian and Alvin, because like both of you, Angel and Ariana, brought up a really interesting point as far as like now is a really good time to be able to even have those conversations with people to move at least portions of your business to tech. I don't know. That's just one, right? Or
yeah, it's been great. We actually just connected with a company out of Grant, Michigan. They built garages and just stuff with metal sheets. And so they've been, they were growing so rapidly, and they were so busy before this happened, and they had to slow down. But because of the timing, that there was a great opportunity to invest in technology. And so, I connected with one of the persons that works at that met at school, and he reached out, and so we just met, and now we're building a software for them to help them out with their pricing and just prepare their sheets easier. And so again, it's perfect time for businesses to kind of just step back, and even entrepreneurs. I think, I've last interview I did, I told Stargarden that this is a perfect time to step back and kind of revise your strategic plan for your business or any goals you're working on, right? Because we have time now. If not now, when, right? As soon as everything gets back to normal and we get back to the grind mode and the hustle, it's going to be hard to kind of, step back and think of the opportunities that come. And so, this has been great for us just to kind of pivot and just find new solutions to keep growing.
Awesome. Yeah. So for me, I try to challenge myself to always think 5, 10 years ahead, right? Because like even like if I'm thinking about, for the next 6 months, obviously Zoom calls are going to be a thing, but what are 2 years, right? In 2022, well, how are we majority going to be communicating? And so in my sessions with people, I really try to push people to think about how within their industry can they create a SaaS platform, right, that solves a common problem that your customers are having. And so for those of you on the call, SaaS just stands for software as a service, right? So if you use let's say, I don't know, the GoDaddy platform to build a website, or Wix, or any Netflix, right, these are all software services that you use. And so for me, one of my quotes that I found somewhere that I'm always repeating is, in the future, everyone is a developer, right? And even as devs, so like from me and Angel's perspective as actual coders, in the future, the truth is people just won't be hiring people for, basic things like setting up a social media, and then in 10 years, definitely not doing website development, right? So like, how do we set people up, and creators and developers and business owners, to be able to do things themselves in an easily and in a accessible way, right? So when I think about the future, I'm always, asking myself, okay, what's the next big innovative idea, but how do we make sure that everyone has access to this? How do I make sure that homegirl down the corner, right, can afford to launch her, baking company, versus the person who's all the way out in East GR and has, a rich uncle who can invest $15,000 next month, right? And so a lot of my conversations are outside of just building and solving the current solution for clients. How do we make sure that you're set up for the next 10 years or 5 years or 3 years to ensure that you are following the wave and the trends of like what's going to be happening? So like, for example, for Wallway Technologies, so my company, we offer certain services and stuff like that, but we're trying to figure out, well, what's going to be the push, right? So when I think about the restaurant industry, and I've been talking about this for 2 years, but I'm always talking about the Internet of Things and IoT. And so figuring out, well, right now there's a pandemic, right? And restaurants can't open because of the state laws and all this good stuff. So I'm always thinking about, okay, well, how do we integrate voice technology in restaurants where we can automate half of these processes? And yeah, that may temporarily gets rid of jobs, but it creates jobs in other areas. So now I get to go to AJ and Angel and be like, oh, Midwest Tech and Loop Coding Center, we need people to help 40 Acres develop, the next voice technology that can help automate some of these processes that they need, so that way they can easily talk to their customer. So for me, I get excited about, taking people's perspective of where they think their businesses are to another level. But another tangible example, I have a gentleman who he's in fly fishing. And so he's been like in the industry for like over 30 years. And right now you can't fish right now because of state laws. And so he's been like, how do I, communicate to my customers and all this good jazz. And so right now we're developing like a digital magazine for him and figuring out, different ways that he can communicate to his customers. So I try to challenge people that if you're not in tech, or if you feel like your business isn't, anywhere near the industry, there's always a way to pivot and to change. And then, of course, you can ask some of us who are on this call these types of questions, but yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think you bring up an incredible point as far as how short-sighted a lot of us have been trained into thinking in operating our businesses or even our lives, and that we have to be a little more farsighted. If people were farsighted and they had piles of cash and savings, if that was even a possibility, they would be able to sustain themselves. The only reason why businesses are in such crisis is because they have like days or weeks of cash on hand, like businesses, even big successful ones. John, I'd love it if you just jump in and contribute, from your comment there.
Oh, I didn't know if that was for me. So one thing that we're excited about at the city is, oh, was that for Ian or was that for me? I'm sorry.
Oh no, John
No, it's
had
good.
thrown in a thing, so I don't know.
Oh, feel free, Ian. I'll go.
No, go ahead, Alvin. You had it.
Oh, I was gonna say one thing that we're excited about at the city is this whole fact we know disparity before COVID, right? And now we have the opportunity to not rebuild the same thing, but to rebuild it more equitably. And we're seem to be talking a ton about, businesses, but I want to just provide the perspective of workforce development and people who are looking for employment. So when we think about those who were, having the most trouble or unemployed before, now that we know, what COVID has done, especially to people of Black and Brown communities, even making it even more of a challenge now. Those are the people who should be considered priority for when we rehire and get things back open, to make sure that those zip codes are aware of opportunities and corral employers to make sure that they're hiring in these areas, to make sure as we do reopen the economy, we're opening it, but in a new way. So I would say a lot of the opportunity is to forget what we've done before and kind of rebuild for what's necessary now and what's going to be sustainable in the future. And I think, especially on the Midwest tech end of things, now, as we talk about developers, right, we still have so many people who contribute to the culture of tech development who just aren't good behind the keyboard, such as myself. And I think aligning them with the industry to help share their ideas to create natural joint ventures and partnerships that will, maybe they're not necessarily the one on the development end, but they're helping to lead a successful company and do some of those things that the developers simply might not have the time to do, or expand the developer skill set with more of a marketing or public facing approach. So I think we have a ton of opportunities, before us, but I do think we have to challenge ourselves not to kind of slip back into what we've done before, because that's simply the way it was. But to think about really, if we want to make institutional change, whether it's some of the big public entities or just individual change within our own entities, how are we going to do that? What does our plan look like for engagement and hiring and apprenticeships and those things? Because now, as we're thinking about new skills, people need money. So we can't just do the paid internships and expect people to show up and get excited about the industry. I think it has to be paid at minimum to make sure that while people are learning their skills, they're still able to put food on their table, and if they're a student, pay for their books to continue to move forward. So those are just some opportunities that I see on that horizon.
Well, I think that the point about pay and how that goes into equity too, right? Like half of America is in poverty. $70,000 a year salary is poverty in the Bay Area.
Yeah, that's wild, man.
When I was pitching my company in the Bay Area, I was living in my car, and I was making more than 70 grand a year. So it's insane that we still expect like all that free, like this pay your dues thing. Like, I don't know. Yeah.
But when we have, so many unfilled jobs, and then we need human capital, we have human capital that need jobs. It's just time to rethink some things and incentivize the trades, and in this regard, the technology opportunities. And I think the bigger employers, they haven't had much disruption. Right now, if they have, is maybe some of the employees' troubles at home who have kids like me who, may have a little more challenges navigating work life with home life now permanently. But they're going to continue to still grow as more industries come into the tech space. So how are they going to get talent? And are they going to build a equitable and diverse workplace to sustain that talent for the next?
I think it's kind of on us, like from the bottom up. It's been such a difficult or impossible fight from the bottom up before, but now as things are kind of leveled or flattened a little bit, I don't know. Again, it's an opportunity, but in this great pause, some of us are going to be able to stand up, for ourselves and take that and demand it. And there's already news that whole offices are like, no, actually, I really enjoy having this time with my kids. It's kind of a pain that I have to teach them also now, but
Yeah.
I want to keep part of this.
Mhm.
We just saw today the announcement from Twitter saying that, okay, for the rest of eternity, if you choose to work from home, do it, because that might be
Hey
better.
Corey, I would add that I work for government, man. So their tradition, but I would say that has been they love the virtual meetings, the productivity that's happening from that. So I will say that that will force us to rethink, our office space and our policies for having employees report every day. When production has maintained or increased in a lot of our departments, which in this industry is kind of unheard of. You might have a couple department heads who are okay with it, but from an organizational standpoint, that will ultimately add some dollars to the bottom line, as well as you sell off some very attractive property maybe, and be able to have more of a nimble workforce for times like this.
Yeah. To Ariana's point, like innovation has never had to react so fast, and for you, and like in the industry of, say, of governance,
Yeah.
that we've never seen something happen so fast. On the smaller scale as well as the larger scale. Whether that works or is effective doesn't matter. It's just like, thanks for showing up.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and now, John, I would love it if you'd jump in and contribute there, because yeah.
Yeah, actually, I was sending a note to Ian, but I sent it to everyone. But anyways,
Hey, John.
hey, AJ, I think what we've talked about at Grand Circus for a long time is becoming like so connected with the employer network, so that students coming out of the boot camp, there's a direct path to different employers. But the traditional model for that, for a lot of employers, is internships. And those are like really literally like May, like when students graduate, college students graduate. So we've always had a tough time. We graduate students every quarter. So this idea of working with employers to create these off-cycle internships, and for students that are probably a little bit older, have different experiences than a college grad, has been something we've been talking about. And I know Anne's on the our Zoom too, and she we've been talking about this with West Michigan Tech Talent. The idea of creating these pathways from not only Grand Circus boot camps, but any boot camp self-learning into companies where you're not just relying on like May graduates filling up the 20 Priority Health or Spectrum Health or Amway internships. How can we get more students involved and give them a chance for employers to connect? So that was part of when I think about opportunities, I think there's opportunities for that, to craft some type of 3 to 6 month internships, apprenticeships, paid well, with employers that worst case scenarios, somebody graduates and gets into that job and they get 3 to 6 months experience, but then they can use that to leverage to another job. Best case, they end up the internship and they get hired full time. But just showcasing talent, I think needs to be done. I talk to employers all the time, and everybody wants to have a more diverse workforce, but it ain't happening. I mean, it just with business as usual. So that's my 2 cents. Ian can talk a little bit more, because I talk to Ian all the time about these things.
Yeah, I think I like what you're bringing up there, as far like that you mentioned, like the schedule of, hey, it's May and this is when it doesn't happen until May. Sorry, you got to wait till May. I think right now in this beginning of post-COVID era, this cycle of revisiting and doing things is getting really fast. Like Ariana's point to, like, hey, you need to be thinking about your business plan like more than just once every 5 years, or more than just when you start your business or fundraise. I know like a lot of this work from home, a lot of people are like, am I working from home or am I living at work? Like every morning is Monday morning and every night's Friday night. Like, I just don't understand. But that's the cycle. Like every month is May. Like every month we need to be, showcasing our talent, or and companies will maybe hopefully realize that since they've been forced to innovate and move so fast, this is just the new pace. Like, it's just the new pace of how we work. Ian, did you want to jump on the end of John's comment there?
Yeah, I mean, so I agree with everyone, and just in terms of just like opportunities. I think the biggest thing I've noticed, you know, being married to a teacher who, you know, luckily still has her job and she's still working, you know, and teaching classes in one of our, you know, free rooms, and then a daughter who's still in school who's also taking classes. And then I have a 1-year-old son who's like looking at us like, why aren't you hanging out with us? You know, and then me working, you know, from, you know, morning to night. I see a lot of opportunities just with education as a whole, you know. So, you know, a lot of challenges that even my wife had with just trying to transition, you know, a lesson plan for, you know, students where, you know, luckily a lot of these students have, you know, come from affluent backgrounds, but, you know, some of them don't, and you know, and figuring out how to, you know, cater certain like lessons to people who have access and people who don't have access. So it's been a little bit of a challenge with that. But just in terms of just, you know, boot camps in general and just what opportunities are out there, you know, I think this is an equalizer. You know, this is a way to really, you know, kind of level the playing field and improve education. You know, education has always had these gaps and these holes. You know, to everyone's point, you know, there's definitely those equity issues, right? Like there's still people who don't have access to, you know, to laptops or to internet access. And then you're talking about like, you know, the access that they have to these tools. You know, Code Academy is a you know, free online tool that has recently been, you know, giving away subscriptions to people who've been affected by this for everyone who's purchased like a pro account. So, you know, that's just one of those ways that like companies are like trying to find ways to adapt. You know, Grand Circus has taken its, you know, intro to coding classes and intro to back-end and front-end courses, more advanced courses, and like completely made them remote and accessible online. We've even lowered the cost. In some cases, we've just given the classes away to, you know, groups of people who are interested as a way of just like introducing these tools to people. So I think there's a lot of opportunity just for just growth in general in education. Some of the problems I do see you know, is just connection with individuals. You know, like this is one of the problems that we've had as a company is, you know, you have 40, you know, staff members who are working in very different situations. You know, a couple of staff members are like teaching 8 hours at a time. So it's really hard to like have that connection and that real like camaraderie that you used to have like in person, especially for a company like Grand Circus that's relatively small in comparison to some other companies. So that's been a big challenge for us, but I do see it as an opportunity. So, you know, how do you like adapt to that? You know, you find different ways to connect, whether it's a, you know, an hour-long lunch on Zoom and we just crack jokes or something like that. There's all these different opportunities. And then on the student side, you know, how do you engage a student, you know, when you have 20 students who are like remote, you know, and in all different, you know, positions, people who have kids, people who don't have kids, people who don't have like a quiet space to necessarily like learn at 8 hours at a time. So like, how do you make things work for an environment like that? And so for me, it's actually really fun because I do see like, you know, some really great opportunities and some fun in like learning how to like adapt and make these things work. But it's a challenge. You know, we're still running a business simultaneously. We still have to, you know, adapt to like certain bottom lines. And, you know, there's this increasing amount of people who are like out of work, you know, and, you know, 30 million people can't be out of work. 40 million people cannot be out of work in a, you know, consumer-based economy. And so like, how do you make that work, you know, economically? How do you make that work where, you know, people can do certain jobs like, you know, run a restaurant, you know, and have like some type of app that allows people to order, you know, remotely, or, you know, then maybe we're talking about automation and we're like, you know, we're getting into, you know, AI and machine learning. And there's just so many different like things that we could be doing to adapt to these growing problems that we're going to face in the future. So I think there's just like a huge amount of opportunity for, you know, what we're doing, but other organizations, other like, you know, startups and companies, you know, and just people to individually start their own companies. You know, there's never been a time in history where so many people can just start a business and start a startup, and there's so many tools out there. Definitely not easy, but I think this is the opportunity to showcase what can be done and like how we can open up those tools for everyone. So those are some of the opportunities I see, especially like with our business and what we do.
Oh yeah, and there are so many free tools. Like there's a great opportunity to start something, but then it doesn't have to cost much either. But then it's like, well, where are they? How do I find them, etc. And to your point of like unemployment, how many people can be unemployed? Even at 90% capacity of what we had like last year is hugely detrimental and unsustainable for the economy that we had. Now I just want to move quickly and wrap this up. Let's talk about like the challenges that we give to our constituents and to our customers or ourselves. Like what are we going to walk away with today? Like give us some action items, and we can start with AJ.
I would say kind of forget the old way or the pre-COVID way and just innovate, figure out how to meet the needs of whether it's your constituents, the students, business owners, whatever the case may be, and be resilient. This time is called for, us as Americans to be resilient, and that looks different for everybody. But, for me, what I take away from it is continue to push in the right direction, to continue to put that sweat equity in, and most importantly, just believe that, things post-COVID will be better. But I think it's just, to your point, innovation has never been needed so swiftly, which creates a ton of opportunity. So I think, especially for those who work with young people, getting them to innovate as well, from a thought perspective. Some of my young people, they can't work right now. They're upset about that, but how can we help, compensate them for their ideas right now, for the things that they'll use in the next 10 to 20 years. And I think that's a different way that we, traditionally look at economics or humanity in America, because it typically from an older generation down. But I work with young people all the time. They're some of the brightest minds that I've been around. So I think in order to solve our problems of tomorrow, we have to legit work with our leaders and those who have to live with tomorrow to make sure that what they build and they actually want and they have buy-in, as opposed to going from the approach that we know best because we know best. So I know that was a ton of rambling, but I think we just got to be innovative and encourage everyone in our space to be innovative as well.
Yeah, that's anybody that we're close to, right? Like arm and elbow length.
I tell you what, man, like my mother, man, she's not the most tech savvy, but now, being home, she has to try some new things. So she'll call me up and ask for, some advice on how to, navigate, how to work some devices and whatnot. But, that generation has to to adapt as well.
Oh, that's a very important point. Those and we know, we have to advocate for our elders. A lot of times they won't or can't advocate for themselves. I know, AJ, you got to take off. So those with the cameras on, if you can give AJ a round of applause. Thanks for joining us and contributing to the conversation.
Thanks, Corey. Yeah, AJ has a 10-month-old and a 2-year-old. So I got to go get those two young guys ready for bed. But I greatly appreciate you, Corey, and Startup Grind, GR, for having me. And anytime in the future that I could be of assistance from the Midwest Tech end or the city of Grand Rapids space, you let me know. And thank you to all the panelists and everyone who joined as well.
Cool. Good to see you, AJ.
Thank you. See you later, everybody. Have a good one.
And then I don't know who else wants to jump in on the challenges and recommendations to people and actions that they can take like today, this week, next month.
Sure, I can jump in. To jump in on AJ's positive note of just like, just be encouraged. I think that this time is very challenging, but again, as everyone has mentioned, and Ian and John and Corey, you guys have mentioned earlier, it's like there are a lot of free resources online. I think I always say there's no better time to innovate than now. So, and that's whether we're in COVID or not. But just kind of like look at, also I would like to challenge people to look at what's going on around them, right? Like all these big companies are overnight just drastically changing or even going under or becoming successful or whatever. And so I guess, I would tell someone, look at what's going on, look at how these companies are changing. And, one day in the future, your big bright idea could be that company, right? Like no one thought that they could compete with Uber Eats probably 6 months ago, but now you actually can, right? With, whatever, figuring out a way to, connect with customers if brick and mortar selling pizza or cupcakes or whatever it is, right? So I just want to challenge people to, definitely get connected, figure out what's going on in your industry. I also challenge sometimes clients when I talk to them to look at how, and I always look at China when it comes down to tech. If you're in tech and you're reading what's going on, you're going to look at China and what they're doing with technology. They're very innovative. And so I challenge people sometimes to Google whatever industry the name of your industry is. So if you're in textiles or, the lawn industry or whatever, kind of look at what's going on in other countries who are out of this COVID thing and see what they're doing. How are they interacting with their clients and customers, right? I saw this really crazy meme. I thought it was a joke, but it was a meme of these hairstylists in China, and they had like these I'm not kidding, it was like a 6 foot long pole, and they were cutting people's hair. And I thought it was a joke, but I'm like, oh, this is just one of those memes that you see on TikTok. But it turned out that there are like literally thousands of like hair salons that are doing, not saying that, in the US, that's what we're going to do. And I definitely wouldn't let nobody braid my hair with no 6 foot long pole. But I think the goal, right, is to seek innovation in other places, in other ways. I was just literally on a call, what's today, Tuesday? So I was on a call on Saturday or something with these women in Zimbabwe, and they have an organization called Women in Tech Zimbabwe. And so I'm connecting with them about, what are some ways that they're locally in their community, how COVID-19 has affected them, how they can figure out to innovate and provide technology resources and access to women in their country, right? And then, we're also, talking about things that can be done here in the United States. So I just have to say that, it's a weird time to be in, but it's also a time for innovation. Like, back in 2008, when there was a stock market crash, Uber created their idea, and of course they had, like, I'm sure rich uncles and access to millions of dollars in funding. But I guess what I'm saying is that you can start somewhere. You can start somewhere. And I also would like to vouch for Grand Circus, because I am a Grand Circus grad. So if you are looking to learn how to code, go to grandcircus.co, right? .co, am I right, guys? .co, okay. To learn how to code. And then, if you have youth, I highly vouch for Angel and Loop Coding Center, the work that they do with the youth. If you're looking for your kids, to learn how to code who are less than 18 years old, it's a really good program as well. So.
Yeah, I really love the point as far like your continued focus on innovation. And I've recently started telling people, like, you can also rethink of what your preconceived idea of what tech is. Like back in the day, like a rock was technology, a hammer was technology, right? Like before there was a car, there was like that was technology.
Yes.
Beam was technology. No different now, so some people, when they're thinking about innovating, it doesn't have to be so fancy. Like you said, you don't have to be Uber tomorrow.
Exactly.
So, all right. Angel?
Yeah, I mean, around pretty much just said it beautifully, and I love the point you made about technology and how it doesn't have to be the next big thing, right? Like you think of IoT and AI and all these big technologies. You see companies who are invested in so much of big things, but there's so many little things that businesses can do, like local businesses. Something I'll be doing for me, like as my part of helping our community, is helping businesses who might not be able to afford our service, just do like helping them set up their free Google account. My business on Google, or a Facebook website. Small things a lot of entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs like ourselves know about it, but you may have your, parents, pop and moms who are so good at doing what they do, which is making a product and they're not good with the technology. So that's something that we trying to, help them and just teach them about simple things like that that can get them exposure.
Yeah, that's a really great point. We take a lot of this for granted, but adding a free chat bot to your website enables you to, get 30% more leads because you're sleeping when people visit your website, maybe. All right. Ian?
I think I was close with just saying, I think being adaptable is going to be hugely important in the future, and just, I think it's just human nature. We want to be comfortable and we want to give it a routine, but the future is going to be adaptability. The ability to kind of pivot and learn new things and new technologies and relatively quicker than normally. So I think I would challenge people to just step outside of the comfort zone and just learn something new. There's never been a time where you can learn so many different things, whether it's fancy thing like masterclass or there's just so many things out there where you can learn something new, and there's so much media for it. Don't waste your time watching Tiger King, although I hear it's really cool. There's just so many opportunities to do so many other things, and this opportunity. So, just challenge yourself, and to your point about, how many tools are out there that are free, look out, I think that's a goal right there. It's just creating a site or an app that lists all the free tools for what you're looking for, there's your, an idea, but, something just like that could really change the game for a lot of people. So just be willing to change and, adapt and learn something new.
Awesome. Thank you. And I don't know, Megan, John, Ann, do you guys have any challenges for people who are going to be listening to this recording?
Yeah, I think my only challenge, right, is, and it's my mission, and if you follow me on LinkedIn, you're probably going to see it every other article, is lifelong learning. That's the way that we evolve. You're never done learning how to do something different to evolve where you're at right now. And I feel like the people that are on the phone right now are at least West Michigan and Detroit-based individuals that'll help with that mission for our greater community. And over to you, John.
Yeah, and my big question is, and I'm not expecting an answer, but how big of a problem is this infrastructure? I mean, I know it's a big problem, but what's the solution to give people more access, better access, more access to high quality internet, more access to tablets? I mean, is that a solvable problem, or is that something that's just not solvable because it's so large? I'm just curious about this infrastructure problem, not only within this Ian mentioned about neighborhoods in Detroit getting better access. How about rural areas or even places in Grand Rapids? Is that coming, or is that still 10 years off? And that's just a rhetorical question.
Right. Yeah, that's a big one. I do know of some really exciting things happening in regions that have bigger challenges than we do. There's 5G is an opportunity, right? But then there's cost and all that and stuff. But there's a really fun company that's partnered with T-Mobile right now, and a modem company that I can't name, but they're launching this huge program in India where through blockchain, they are giving the actual users of the internet ownership over their usage and data that they provide, that the advertisers use to advertise, and then give a share of those advertising proceeds back to the user. So not only is the 5G connection free because you want more users as a commercial enterprise, but so is the router because that's how you track it all. And then the money flows up and down the blockchain. India is a great example for a place for that to happen because they don't have any existing infrastructure to even start with. We unfortunately have this huge existing infrastructure that is now just crippled by limits of access and stuff. But I think having worldwide and global examples of where it is going to be possible. I don't know that it's Facebook like having air balloons everywhere, but you're totally right. So yeah, I just want to thank everyone again for joining on this conversation. Panelists, round of applause from me, and anyone who's on camera, give yourself a round of applause. Thank you very much for participating.
Thanks for having me.
And then, yeah, so this and all of our events are available at startupgrind.com, at Grand Rapids at startupgrind.com/grand-rapids. And then I'll see you guys on the other side. Have a good rest of your night, guys. Really appreciate your attendance and participation.
Have a good day.